Hello, Bulldog fans. Welcome to episode 8 of On the Engine. I'm here with Lindsay Woolley. He's the head basketball coach for Western Lady Bulldogs. And just for everyone's knowledge, we are 6 feet apart doing this interview, so we're good. If you notice this hat, got a nice new logo. Stop down to the Klondike. Lindsay, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, this is year 9 here at Montana Western. Definitely the most interesting year that we've had. Before I got here, grew up in Missoula, coached, started. I actually played basketball at Montana Tech, which I know for the people that listen that probably sticks them in the chest a little bit. But that was the place that wanted me, and I thought I wanted to be an engineer at the time. So went there for 4 years and played basketball and played golf and started observing junior varsity basketball practice my second year. That's when they started the JV program there, and thought it might be something I wanted to do. Once I did my internship after my third year at Montana Tech, I realized engineering probably wasn't the path I wanted to take, and so I transferred to the University of Montana and got my math degree and started coaching high school, and was all set up to go back for my second year coaching junior varsity boys basketball, and had the opportunity to go to Miles City and coach junior college basketball. And I figured it was, I didn't have much tying me there other than my obligation, to the team and whatnot, but I could get my student teaching switched, and thought if you're going to go to college, you might as well go now. Thinking I could always come back to the high school game if that's what I wanted to do, and packed up everything in my car and drove to Miles City, 500 miles away, and stayed in the dorms and made nothing and worked 4 other jobs just to try to get by, but I loved it. I had, Sean Neary and Dwight Canary were 2 great mentors for me, people that I respect a lot and taught me a ton about the game and gave me a ton of freedom. And so I was there for 8 years. The first 4 years I coached, I was the assistant with the men. And like I said, I also coached golf, and then coached a year of the women with Dwight and knew that that's what I wanted to do. And so it made it kind of hard to go to men's practice after a while because I knew that was my passion, and I wanted to go on the women's side, and had to stick with the men for another year because I had some things change with jobs and those types of things, and felt like obligated to stay with the men. And Dwight left and took another job at Casper College, and the women's job opened. I was fortunate enough to get hired, and I guess, as they say, the rest is history. But I certainly enjoyed it. It was a great spot. Met my wife there, and tricked her into moving back to Western Montana. So it's all worked out.
You mentioned you've been here for 9 years, have a national championship in there. So that's a pretty cool deal.
Yeah, it's not. I don't think that when you take a job, unless you're taking a job at a Duke or North Carolina or a place where they expect you to win a national championship, it's certainly not on the it's not on the bucket list. It never was for me. I got a text from Mark Durham, who hired me. Oh, it was probably about, I don't know, 1 or 2 a.m. after we won it that year, a couple years ago, and he said, "Boy," he goes, "what?" He's like, "That's exactly what I envisioned 7 years ago when I hired you." He's like, "It just took 7 years longer than I thought it was going to take." And, we still joke about it to this day, but it was obviously a really special group of kids that kind of went through a lot. Like, I think we had 3 of our 5 starters that year started as freshmen or sophomores and finished last, and understood that they were, pieces of the puzzle. And then obviously you had a big piece of the puzzle in the National Player of the Year, and she's with us for a couple of years, and we're kind of on the cusp, and then get over the hump the following year. But even after getting in the Final Four, the year before, I didn't think that it was something that was in the cards for us. I mean, it's a hard tournament to win, 5 games in 7 days, and
Absolutely.
matchups are so dependent on who you play and when you play them. And obviously for us to get through the semifinal game the year we won it was, I'm not sure it was lucky, but there was a lot of things.
Spectacular.
Yeah, it was pretty unique. I think we were down 7 with 40 seconds to go, and to have them miss a couple free throws and for us to score every time we got the ball. And then obviously Bree hits a big shot from the corner, sent it to overtime. People call it destiny, people call it luck, whatever it is. It was definitely on our side, and it was a pretty cool experience.
It was. And I was there to enjoy it. That was awesome. Lindsay, looking at your roster, it seems pretty young, but you have a lot of experience on your roster right now.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we've got, Paige Holmes is a kid from Sealy Lake that has been with us. This is her 5th year in the program. And she started, I think she started games about halfway through her redshirt freshman year, which was really a big turning point for us. I mean, she was a kid that redshirted, worked hard, was great in practice. She's a coach's kid, so she knows the game and is absolutely passionate about it. And we moved her into the starting lineup about 8 or 10 games into her, like I said, her redshirt freshman year. And since then, she hasn't lost many games. And she's not the biggest scorer, and she's not someone that gets any accolades, but she's a big piece of what we do. And now to have her as a 5th-year senior is huge. And obviously we have a lot of kids back. I mean, Brindley Fitzgerald had a good year last year and had a really good summer, a really good COVID summer, as good a summer as you can have with all the restrictions and whatnot being placed on her, and she worked her tail off. And, you can tell that we've got kids that are hungry, and obviously they're still young. I mean, Paige is our only senior, and with that, it's going to be a lot of still sophomores and juniors that play a lot, but they're confident, and I know they're excited to get started. And now we've got 5 practices under our belt, and hopefully we can keep rolling.
As far as recruiting, how has COVID impacted your ability to recruit?
It's been, it's just like anything else. Recruiting is challenging enough. In the spring, it was really hard because I think we lost out on a few kids that we probably potentially could have gotten if we could have got them to campus and got them to meet our players. But that's the way it goes. I mean, we certainly tried and didn't probably get, we were trying to land one impact transfer type kid. We didn't get them. We signed 3 essentially freshmen that I think will all help us either this year or down the road. But I was trying to find us some experience.
Sure.
And we certainly found it. We just couldn't get them to campus and get them signed. So I think it's hard, but it's
Everyone's got the same.
Everyone's got the same issues, and for us, I think our biggest drawing point is our kids. I really believe it is once we get kids to campus and they spend some time with our players and see what we have to offer and how we operate and the mentality that our kids have in terms of how much they want to get better and those types of things. Kids either look at it and say, yeah, this is where I want to be, or they don't. And I think for the majority of them, they really buy into it and decide that this is where they want to be. So for us, it was hard. And as we look into next year's class, obviously in the fall is the time we bring in a lot of kids, and we brought in 2 this year so far. We had 3 other visits scheduled, and then we had some COVID issues, so we had to reschedule and push them back and those types of things. And that's that's the reality of it. It's right. But on the plus, like you look out on the plus side, like for us in Montana, now that high school basketball is pushed back, we can bring in some kids here in November that we usually can't bring in because they usually jump right from volleyball or cross country, whatever they're doing, and jump right into basketball. Well, now basketball's pushed back, so they're going to have 2, 3, 4 weeks where they don't have a school sport per se that's going to keep them busy. So, we'll just try to, continue to focus on that 21 class and try to, if we could sign 2 or 3 kids from Montana and potentially a transfer, that would be our goal. And then, obviously the recruiting game has changed a ton. So we're working on 22s and contacting those kids. It's a lot different than it was even 10 years ago where, a Montana kid, for example, you didn't start recruiting a kid till they were going into their senior year, and they didn't commit until maybe the spring of their senior year. And now there's kids right now, 21s are signing at NAIA schools and Division II schools instead of waiting like they used to. So it's, the climate and the landscape is always changing. You just have to be adaptable. Right. And I think, with COVID, that's the number one rule.
That's what we have to do, yeah. I mean, COVID has impacted, we talked about the recruitment, but how about for your preseason? I mean, you're basically just starting like now when you would have started month ago.
Yeah,
or
exactly. It's in the preseason, it's affected us in a big way. I mean, typically we start practice around October 1st. That month, our league rule is the last Monday, or I can't remember exactly the wording, but it's basically, if it's not October 1st, it's the Monday closest to October 1st, right? So maybe it's September 28th, 29th, whatever. And we just started I don't even know what today is, but we started 6 days ago.
28th.
Today's 28th, so we started the 22nd, so we're 3 weeks behind at least. But we could have started the same time. We could have started practicing, but to me, I looked at it and said, well, if we start practice September 28th and we practice for 7 weeks for our first game, like, it'd be great. Like, it'd be great for the first 3 weeks, and then what do you do those last 4 weeks? The kids are tired of each other, and they're tired of me, and I'm tired of them, and so we really wanted to just try to get it as normal as possible in terms of trying to go for 4 weeks before our first game. And so it's decimated our preseason schedule. We're only going to play 23 games, 20 conference games and 3 non-conference games. We had 2 scrimmages scheduled for the middle of November. I don't know if those are going to happen based on whether they have testing protocols and whether we'll allow them to come to campus. But that's the nature of it. I mean, we have teams in our league that are playing 30 games, and we have some that are only playing league games. Yeah. And so, fair, equitable, whatever word you want to use, it's COVID. So we're just going to try to adapt and do the best that we can.
Okay. So what are your thoughts on the 2021 schedule? You're going to play the same teams 4 times. Mm-hmm. That's a tall order. I mean, last year, or even the last few years, you had to play them 3 times. Now you get to see your friends 4 times a year.
Yeah. It's when I was a redshirt freshman at Montana Tech, that's what we still did, and we played Friday, Saturday, and so I don't have experience playing in it because my freshman year when we played, we had added more teams and we didn't play back to back. But I remember talking to the older kids, and obviously talking to some of the people that have been in the league or played in the league, and the difference between what happens, for us, it'll be Saturday night, and what happens Sunday afternoon is night and day. And so much of it's going to be mental in terms of how your kids approach the game, and maybe you got beat by 20 the first night, you might win by 15 the next night, and it could go the other way. So it's, I still think the best team wins. I mean, even though you play everybody 4 times, the cream still rises to the crop, and that's obviously, is it ideal? Absolutely not. For our league, it's challenging because now we're down to 6 teams with LC State leaving, and if you match up our 6th place team against every other league in the country at our level, and take their last place team, I believe whoever finishes last is probably going to win 80% of those games. So it's a different. We don't have a bottom feeder like a lot of leagues do. We don't have a team that you look at like, hey, we're going to wherever,
it's competitive,
and we're going to win. It's competitive, and that's a testament toward the league and the coaches and the kids in our league. But it sucks. I mean, it stinks as a coach and a player because you're going on the road and you're probably going to, if you just show up, you're going to win 2 games, and that's just not the case. And if you don't show up, you could get beat by 30, and that's the reality of it, and that's fine. I think it fosters that competitive mindset, and I think it shows through for us at the national level. Our teams have done so well the last 5, 6, 7 years at the national tournament because they know when we get to league play, there's no nights off, and we've had, I think Montana Tech might have got last in league or tied for last year, and beat our 1st place team and beat our 2nd place team and beat them handily a couple times. So you don't know what's going to happen, and I think that's good for your kids, and obviously from a competitive standpoint and a fan aspect, it's great for our league.
Sure. How about eligibility? The COVID because part of the season's canceled last year, there was no tournament.
What the NAI has done so far is they've said if you play less than half of your games, which for us is 15, and don't play a postseason game, then you could save your year of eligibility, in theory. We have 23 games scheduled right now. I hope we can play all 23. I don't know what's going to happen, whether it's our team or another team that goes into COVID protocol. We just don't know. I know we have some kids that want to preserve their year of eligibility, so to speak. And when we get to it, we'll make those decisions. And it could be a matter of we get to postseason play them. I'd only have 5 or 6 kids that want to play because they didn't, they want to graduate, move on, et cetera, et cetera. We're hoping that the NAIA follows suit with everybody else in the country.
That would be nice.
We're currently the only classification, whether it's NCAA, USCAA, that has not made that decision and said it's a free year. NJCAA, they've all done it. The NAIA has not said anything yet. We still have some time. I'm hoping, I don't know if anybody else is, but I'm sure there's other coaches that feel the same way, that, we had kids that were shorted at the end of last year, and that's reality, and we have kids that are going to get shorted again this year. And I think we have to do, our job is to do what's best for our kids. And as long as we put the ball in their court and let them make the decision for themselves, then I think we're doing right. And some kids are going to say yes, some kids are going to say no, I want to move on, and that's fine. That's their choice. But I think we need to give them a choice.
I was going to ask you if there's any updates from the NAIA at this point. Apparently not.
Crickets.
Explain how you do your recruiting from year to year. Try and replace people that you lose? Are you trying to replace just a position? How does that work for you?
Well, we're always trying to find. It's changed. When I got here, I was always looking like positionally, like we need this, we need this, we need that. And I think at our level, and I think a lot of levels in a lot of schools, you can't always get the position that you need. And one of the things nice about basketball, it's, if you play it the way that we play it, it's essentially positionless. So really, we're just looking for the best kid that we can find. And yeah, maybe you might lean to a big kid, maybe you might lean to a point guard, but other than that, we're just looking for basketball players. And so for us, it's not so much a matter of position, it's more of a matter of fit in terms of who they are, how they work, how they fit into how we want to play, and in the type of kid that they are. So that's really how we've approached it. I think it's worked out well for us. I think we've been small at times because the state of Montana doesn't produce a ton of big kids. And, if it produces 15 kids that are over 6 foot, 7 of them play volleyball, and then you're fighting for the other 7 or 8 with the other, with the 2 Division I's and the Division II and the other frontier schools. So, like I said, we've just tried to find kids that just love basketball. And I think that's where we've kind of turned the corner a little bit in terms of our recruitment, that we've been able to identify kids that really just love it and want to be in Dillon and want to be at Western and want to work. And, they may not have been huge contributors their freshman year, their redshirt year, but, 2-3 years down the road, they've gotten a lot better. And so that's really been our approach. And I think it will continue to be unless, obviously something drastic changes.
So you said something just a little bit earlier in the question about chemistry and how you're looking for the kids to have a good chemistry with when you're recruiting, what type of chemistry they have with the team. So when they come in, they're working out with the team, and you can see that. Plays a big role in your recruitment.
It does. I think what we can see as myself and Tori as coaches to visit about and say, yeah, I think that kid fits or that kid doesn't fit. And then, visiting with 2 or 3 of our older kids that have been around to see we don't make a decision based on what our kids tell us per se, but it can sway us one way or the other, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
They're almost the tiebreaker. And so I think it's hard to put into words because it's a lot of, looking into the makeup of a kid and their body language and how they interact with their parents and how their parents are. It's a big piece. Like, sometimes when you have parents that are super, super involved, it's like, does this kid really love it or do the parents love it? And I think you have to kind of find your way through the weeds a little bit and just decide. And we make mistakes all the time because, we're human and you never really know. And sometimes you get enthralled with a certain aspect of a kid's game, but you really have to just try to hone in and find the kids that fit here. Not every kid wants to come to Dillon, Montana. Like that's the reality. Like, there's not a lot to do. There's no mall, there's no Walmart, there's not a lot going on. And we're upfront and honest with kids, before we bring them to campus if they're an out-of-state kid. Like,
and mom and dad are pretty happy about that.
Yeah, absolutely. There's not a lot of distractions. If you love to hoop and you love to go to school, then, this can be a really good place for you. And that's what we try to sell, and not tell them anything that, that's not true. Because I think with all the transfer stuff we see in college sports now, it's a lot of it is because kids get sold the wrong bill of goods.
Right.
And it probably loses us some kids. And I know, like, there's kids where we have conversations and I say things and I can tell when they leave my office, like, they didn't like what I said, and that's fine. Because
Sure.
in 6 months, 2 years, 3 years, when they come into my office, they want to know what I think, and I tell them,
Right.
I'm going to tell them the truth. And, they might not.
Might not like
If they didn't like it the first time and they still came, they're definitely not going
Right.
to like it the second time. So we just try to really be honest with them. And, and I think that's probably showed a little bit in our transfer attrition rate and those types of things that,
Yeah.
our kids typically stick around. Obviously we're like everybody else. We lose a couple here and there, but, for the most part, they come here for the right reasons and they stay for the right reasons.
Right.
So how about the girls that you have coming in this year? What do you have?
Yeah, it's unique because this year with the eligibility stuff like we talked about earlier, I don't know that any of them are redshirt. We can potentially play all of our freshmen. Well, we only have 2 true freshmen, Matt Grass from Miles City and Gabby Weber from Belgrade, and Gabby still got some health issues. So, but potentially they're both going to play, and potentially save a year. We haven't really gotten to that point with individual meetings, those types of things, but I think all our 3 newcomers will all play. We have 14 kids on our roster right now. We have 11 practicing. Hopefully we'll get our 12th back next week. And then, with those other 2 health-wise, provided they'll be practicing. And so everybody's probably going to play. And
Good.
so that's, we're kind of looking at it as a bit of a developmental year. It certainly doesn't mean we're not going to try to win games and do those types of things, because we have older kids like Paige that deserve that right. But we're going to just try to be adaptable and try to make it fun and try to teach our kids some new things and, just try to stay positive, because I think their mental health is already, it's hard enough as it is with everything that they're dealing with. And,
Yep.
Myself as a coach, like, I'm a 41-year-old adult and I have good days and bad days, like way more now than I did last year at this time.
For sure.
And so I think we just have to try to make it enjoyable and, make them have a good experience. And that's ultimately what we're here for.
All right.
You have 5 named academic all-conference this spring, 4 named Dactronic Scholar athletes in September. Do you think the block scheduling helps your athletes to be better students?
There's no question. It's the best academic model for a student athlete that's out there. And I think it's a good academic model for the modern day college student as well. I mean, I think I go back to 20 years ago when I was in college, we all just took out student loans and we all just went to college, and
And we're paying them off.
and we just, now we're all paying them off. Right. So that was the norm. Right.
Mhm.
And now some of us worked like I worked in the library a few hours a week, but it wasn't
Sure.
enough to pay off my student loans. It was just a little bit here,
Right.
it was $30 a week or whatever, but it's changed. I mean, it's harder to get student loans now. It's more of a kids need to work their way through college. Like, parents, don't, with the economy where it's at, they don't necessarily have the means to save for their kids and just say, I'm going to pay for college, take care of everything else, those types of things. So the model is great in terms of how it blocks your time into, here's your academic time. You have extra, whether it's free time or sports time or work time or both. It's a really good model, and I think our kids have really thrived at it. And I mean, I think our GPA last spring was like 3.87.
Mm-hmm.
Our overall GPA for the year was over 3.7. I mean, it was far and away the best I've had, and probably the highest that we've had in a long time at Western. So that's a detriment, or excuse me, it's not a detriment. It's a compliment to our kids, because obviously we've recruited some really high academic kids that understand the importance of academics, but it's also a kudos to the block as well.
Sure.
As far as the block program goes, does it make it easier for you as a coach to keep tabs on the kids, to make sure that the requirements are being fulfilled, that type of stuff?
No,
No.
it's harder. It really is, because coming from Miles Community College, where we had, our kids took 4 or 5 classes a semester and they progressed through, and you knew every 3 or 4 weeks they were going to have tests, papers, whatever due. We could do grade checks throughout the semester and see where our kids at.
Sure.
Whereas with the block, it's a little bit harder because some teachers might not give a test until halfway through the block, which is basically like a midterm for a normal student. So it's a little bit hard to track how they're doing. Obviously, we want them to communicate with us and those types of things. But if you get behind in the block, you're in trouble. And a lot of times you can't recover. It's not like a regular semester where maybe the first month you don't perform the way you should and you can get caught up the last 2 months. That's just not the case. And so that's challenging. It's more of a time constraint for us because every time we do a weight workout or we do an individual workout or a group workout, we have to do 2 of them because we have kids in class in the morning, kids in class in the afternoon. So, those are small. Yeah. I mean, that's stuff that we don't mind being in the gym, and Tori does a good job with those kids with individuals and in the weight room and those types of things. So it's a little bit more of a time constraint. The academic piece can be challenging. I mean, before we used to do, when I coached in junior college, we had study table like 2 or 3 times a week. And now we've just gone to basically saying, if you don't do well one semester, that changes the rest of your semester, or the first block.
Right.
It changes the rest of your block. So if you get, like for our rule is, if you get a C or less, you have every day for an hour the rest of the semester. And if it's block 4, then you get the whole next semester. Now, that doesn't help them in the immediate time, but I think it trains them in terms of like, I don't want to give up 5 hours a week having to be here, and it shows them like, okay, now I need to take care of my business, and that's
right.
If they get if they get a C, I think if they get a C, they get 1 block. Less than a C, then they have the rest of the semester, and that's mostly it's just like, you screwed up, let's fix it. And hopefully it doesn't happen again. And it has worked out pretty well for us. But like I said, that's the hard part. We don't know if it doesn't help them in that particular class.
Right.
It just helps them moving forward. And that's,
right.
We
It's
found
really
that's the best way to deal with
a
it.
growing process.
For sure. I mean, it's teaching them responsibility and time management and all those types of things that we're trying to impart on them.
Exactly.
As far as the Frontier Conference goes, what do you think who's going to be the top competition this year?
Carroll and Great Falls are probably a nose ahead of everybody else. Carroll, they both have their best players back, and that's obviously, you can't win games without your best players playing well. And Rocky was a team that was up there, and they lost their best kid, their big kid, and a couple other good pieces as well. And Carroll's they have 4 starters back, and then you had a kid like Jamie Pickens, who's probably, in my opinion, she's probably the best female basketball player since Joe Barta.
Yeah.
In the last 10 years. And so to get a kid like that to come in, like, she'll have a huge impact. They're going to be hard to beat. In Great Falls, Bill's done a really good job of kind of building his roster, and he's got probably the best point guard in the league. And if Jamie's not the best kid, he's got the best kid. And so those are probably the 2 teams that are head and shoulders ahead of everybody else. Northern's got a bunch of kids back. So that's obviously, Chris does a good job, and that they're going to be hard to beat. And, Rocky's got a bunch of new kids that are talented on paper. How they come together, we'll see. And then Tech obviously has a bunch of pieces back as well. So it's going to be hard. It's always hard.
It's the Frontier Conference. So, biggest rivals for you as a coach in Hewitt?
Yeah, for me, I just don't really want to lose to any of them. But I know for our kids, the 8 or 9 years I've been here, it's been Carroll, and I think it's been probably directly attributed to the fact that we've had a number of kids from Helena, and a number of kids from Helena that didn't get recruited by Carroll. And so it kind of gives them that extra needle. Plus, you always want to knock off who's at the top, and they've perennial been in the top 1, 2, 3 in the league the 8 or 9 years I've been here. So, that's really been the team that our kids, and they do a good job of getting up for all of them. But that's definitely the one that they circle, and I don't need to say much in the locker room before we play them. So,
well, that's good.
Yeah,
not a lot of motivation.
We're not going to be here forever, and you want to leave it better than you found it.